I guess, final thoughts on Minnesota and the Huskers' first win of the season.
Yeah, I would say it was great to get the first win, to see the Huskers get the first win. It was exciting. It was relieving. I was very happy. I think the biggest thing that I took away, because it could have been, almost a fluke type deal. It could have been, they finally, were able to get it done. Now what are we going to get this week type deal? I don't get that feeling, because from Colorado to Purdue, I thought you saw a very noticeable digression. And, with Colorado, the team looked really good. We didn't win, but it looked really good. Then with Troy, they go out and it's kind of a dud. Michigan, we really got stomped. Purdue, you lose by 2 touchdowns on your home field to a team that at the time was 0-3. That was tough. And then the captains come in, they talk to Frost the next day on their only day off on Sunday. How do we get this right? And they go out against Wisconsin. And they played a team that was just better, but you saw a noticeable improvement. You never felt like we were just entirely out of the game. They were noticeably playing better. They just were playing a better team. Then they play against Northwestern. And they all played Northwestern. They were the better team on that day. They should have won, but they found a way to lose. And then this past week against Minnesota, they jump out to a big lead. They're outplaying them. They're clearly the better team. Minnesota comes back to make it 28-22, and you're thinking, oh, my gosh, is it going to happen again? And the difference in the progression from Northwestern to Minnesota was that they found a way to win. And they did it by winning the penalty battle and the turnover battle. Minnesota had their first touchdown called back, and they ended up having to punt because of a penalty. Their last would-be touchdown, they were going in to try to score, ended up being a turnover in our favor. There's 14 points off the board. The game looks a lot different. All of a sudden, the Huskers are benefiting from these things, and, man, it was nice to be on the other side of that equation for once. And they're finding ways to win. So I think you're seeing a very noticeable progression in the right direction upwards now. And so I think that's what excites me the most.
Is that the next step now? Now that you finally got that monkey off your back, you can finally start moving forward here in other aspects of building a program?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the natural next step, just based on who we're playing, is there are certain opponents where you should soundly beat them. You're heavily favored. They're favored by 43. So the next natural progression, just based on who we play, is to go out and beat someone soundly that we should beat soundly. Now, every year, FBS teams come up and they surprise and beat FBS teams. And I mean, Bethune, what are they, 4-4? So they're average FCS team, and our record indicates that we're well below average in the FBS. You can argue we're playing better, but it's one of those things where it can be a little bit of a track game in the aspect of it's supposed to be the bye week. We're just coming off a big win, and I got fans already hitting me up. What do you think about our chances to beat Ohio State next week, especially after what Purdue did? So it's one of those things where they got to come focused and ready to play. And I think the biggest thing they need to do, like if I was the player, my biggest goal would be to be sitting on the bench in the fourth quarter watching all the backups play. And if that's their goal and that's their mindset, everything else will just kind of fall into place.
Right. One more thing from the Minnesota game. I did want to talk to you about Adrian Martinez and just the performance he put together on Saturday. Is that just going to be something we're going to see a lot of in the future of Adrian?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's a freshman, so he's still going to make some of those freshman learning mistakes. He's still a young guy, but, I mean, coming into the season. So I do a lot of interviews every week, and I do some national interviews, and the national people, they don't give a crap about Nebraska's bias. In fact, their bias would be against us. And so they would ask me questions like, well, he's a running back who can throw. Can he actually throw? Can he stay healthy? And all these things. That was a big question. We all knew he could run. How well could he throw? And, from a national perspective, they're like, oh, can he stay healthy and things of that nature. He has proven not only can he throw, I think he can throw about as well as any quarterback in the Big Ten if you just watch him. I know Clayton Thorson put up some really big numbers, and I know his administration, but the quarterback for Ohio State is going to be on the Heisman list this year. I know they can throw pretty well, but he's right up there with any of them. So he's a guy who physically can run. He can throw mentally. Every time I talk to him, I walk away being really impressed. Every time I hear him talk, he's just mature beyond his years. So he's one of those guys. He's a young guy. It's still a learning curve. Still going to be some useful mistakes, but I mean, to say that if he stays healthy, the future is bright for him, I think that would be quite an understatement.
Yeah, he's pretty darn good against the Gophers. 4 black shirts handed out this week. Do you agree with those? And do you think that the defense has progressed in that way?
Yeah, I got no problem with it. I mean, the defense is behind the offense at this point. Although you look at what we did for 3.5 quarters versus Northwestern. The defense only gave up 14 points for 3.5 quarters. Obviously, the last half of the quarter was what it was. You look at Minnesota, going into almost right before halftime, it was 28-0. And then they ended up with 8 points going into halftime. Now, Minnesota ended up going on 3 long consecutive scoring drives. So there's consistency, and there's things that need to be improved upon. But you can see the progression with the defense. It's tough when you give up, almost 500 yards 2 consecutive weeks to say that. But the defense, if you know that the defense is behind the offense, where the offense is at this point, and you watch and compare to how the defense did at the beginning of the year to how they're doing now, knowing there's still improvement that needs to be had, you can see some improvements that have been made the past couple of weeks specifically.
One of those black shirts that was handed out, Ben Stilley, a local kid. He's out of Ashland, Nebraska here. It's about 30 minutes outside of Lincoln. He turned it down. Have you ever heard of anybody doing that? And do you think that's a noble thing for him to do?
So I think he's honestly the first person in the history of Nebraska football to turn it down. I've heard of, some of even my former teammates, if they didn't play well, they would turn it in if they didn't feel like they were continuing to earn it. I'd never heard of anyone turning it down to begin with. And so to me, when I heard that, I was like, that's interesting. And then I was like, well, why? And he said he felt like he hadn't practiced well enough. He didn't deserve it based on his practice performance. And my thought was, well, don't the coaches determine that? But it just instantly popped into my mind. It's great when the coaches are telling you who the team should be, who they want the team to be, what they expect from you. It's better when the players start to expect it of themselves and demand it of themselves. And the ultimate goal is you get to where the players are holding each other accountable. And all the coaches have to do is explain to the new guys, this is who we are, this is what we do, and then the players enforce it. And to me, this was a gigantic step in that direction. So once I kind of thought about it, it was like, you know what? I think this is a big sign of them starting to understand what the culture needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Bethune-Cookman, how do you kind of touched upon it at the top, but how do you kind of overlook or not overlook a team of this caliber?
Yeah, it's basically what I already said. It happens every year. There's upsets. We just won our first game in over a year in Memorial Stadium, almost a year overall. Don't just take number 2 for granted. And like I said, my goal and everyone's goal, and it's not a disrespectful thing to Bethune-Cookman, but there's a reason some teams are in FCS and some are in FBS. There's a reason some are in power conferences and so much. Everybody can play. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. But to me, the goal should be, because you can talk about penalties, turnovers, getting after the quarterback, running the ball. We should win the game. We should win it handily. And as long as the focus is there, that's what will happen. So my main focus going into the game as a player would be to make my goal, my focus being sitting on the bench of the 4-footer, because we've got such a nice lead at that point that everybody else gets to play.
You got a score prediction for me, Adam?
56-14 Huskers.